Chapter 29 of Zhang Henshui's Golden Pink Family. The short episode is full of joy and laughter, and the whole family is laughing and joking. Seeing his expression, Qingqiu stopped laughing and asked what was going on. Yu smiled and said, "Go quickly, the fourth uncle and the fourth young lady are back. Oh, there is also a little girl, who is like a doll, so fun." The wife's room is now crowded with people. Yanxi heard that it was such a thing happened, and he said with a smile, "This is such a big fuss, it's surprising. Why didn't the telegram come?" Yu said. The fourth lady said, "Let us not guess when she will arrive, so that everyone can go out when she gets home." I was so happy. Upon hearing this, Yanxi turned around and ran away without saying another word to Qingqiu. Qingqiu shouted, Qi, don't run away. Why don't you put the check on your table away?" Yanxi walked far away, turned around and said, "It doesn't matter. Why don't you put the paper box away? Take the key in the drawer, open the drawer, put the check in, lock, the secret lock then." He said to take it away, but the following words could no longer be heard. Yanxi walked to her mother's room and saw that the room was full of people. Mrs. Jin was holding a little girl in a white suit, with a smile on her face. His fourth sister Daozi and fourth brother-in-law Liu Shuhua were surrounded by everyone and were joking. When Liu Shuhua saw Yanxi, he quickly took a step forward, held Yanxi's hand, and looked up. He smiled and said, "The seventh brother is still like this. He has not aged at all." Yanxi smiled and said, "How old are you?" "Just say he is old. I think the fourth brother-in-law is a bit darker." Liu Shuhua said, "Of course there are no people who travel. People are comfortable at home. How can they not be embarrassed?" Daozi also came over and said with a smile, "Why do you think I came back today?" Yanxi said, "Then how do I know?" Liu Shuhua said, "Your fourth sister? He said you were 18 years old the day after tomorrow, so I came back to celebrate your birthday." Yanxi smiled and said, "My family has forgotten it, but those who are far away will remember it." Runzi said, "You have to make this clear. We just said we were going to give you a birthday gift. How can we say we forgot about it?" Yanxi said, "I didn't dare to say anything to you." Runzi said, "Who are you talking about?" It's okay if Yanxi doesn't explain. Okay, after the explanation, I saw that everyone sitting in the room didn't dare to offend, but I didn't know which one to say. He smiled and said, "Someone has forgotten anyway, so why bother asking? Not only do other people forget about birthdays, but it is also easy for you to forget. So when I say that family members forget, that's true." Runzi said, "I asked you to point out who has forgotten. You can't point out the person, but you insist on saying that someone has forgotten. It shows that you are talking nonsense." Miley was sitting next to Mrs. Jin, playing with the little nephew, when she saw Yanxi was embarrassed and said with a smile, "Forgetting means someone forgets. I don't know about others. Speaking of myself, it was only when the fourth sister mentioned it just now that I remembered it. In this way, I am the one who forgot." Runzi smiled said, "He doesn't do any good to you. Why do you want to help him? Let him be embarrassed and see if he will continue to talk nonsense in the future." The Wei said, "Bamai is still so loyal. It's better to always be like this." Miley, listen, don't you get good criticism? Mrs. Jin said, "Since you know it's good to be honest, why aren't you honest?" He said, and everyone in the room laughed. Everyone laughed, and Yanxi said, "After talking for a long time, the fourth sister brought us some things, but we haven't seen them yet. I think there must be a lot." Dao Jidao, "I'm sorry, I didn't bring anything. As soon as I entered the door, I made a statement. Since you didn't hear me, I might as well say, isn't there a boycott of Japanese goods in China? Even the three of us who came from Japan were under great suspicion, so I had the nerve to bring them along. A lot of Japanese things. If you think I'm saving money, I can buy other things for you." Miley said, "What we want is what you brought. If you want to buy something as a replacement in Beijing, that's fine. There is no reason." Dao Jidao, you are also a person who cannot wear a high hat. If you say you are honest, you will become more honest. Everyone laughed again. They met like brothers, and chatted and laughed for a long time. Mrs. Jin has already ordered people to clean the rooms for Dao and his wife to live in. It turns out that Liu Shuhua was working as a consul in Japan, and now the ministry has issued an order to transfer him to the ministry. When the couple arrived in Beijing for the first time, they had not yet looked at a house, so they stayed in Jinzai for the time being. Liu Shuhua also had a Japanese concubine who also came with him. This woman's name is Mingquan Yingzi. She was originally the current daughter of the Liu family. As time went by, she fell in love with her master. Daozi dismissed Yingzi because he had no temper and was attentive to her, so he left her alone. Later, Shuhua, with his wife's understanding, asked Yingzi to be his concubine. This time, when Shuhua and his wife returned to China, Yingzi naturally followed them. First of all, being a concubine in China is much better than the current female president in Japan. Secondly, this is also in line with Japan's colonial policy. But Shuhua was very afraid of his father-in-law and mother-in-law, so when he arrived at his home, it was inconvenient to bring his concubine in with him. So after getting off the bus at the station, Sakurako took a piece of luggage and went to the Japanese hotel Qingqiu. The relationship between Daozi and her husband was originally very good. Since he did not dare to cause trouble blatantly, it was inconvenient for Daozi to expose his shady secrets, so no one in the Jin family knew about it. One day later, it was Yanxi's birthday. This is the rule of the Jin family. During the whole lifespan, 9 people should do it, but not 10. Yanxi's 20-year-old was originally supposed to be done next year, but because there was news about Yanxi going abroad next year, it was moved forward 1 year. Mrs. Jin arranged a noodle banquet in the kitchen the day before, and everyone ate noodles. The happiest people here are naturally a group of innocent girls, who just worry about finding nothing exciting to do. So early in the morning, Qingqiu asked Zhao Lan and Yuer to change their clothes and come to pay Yanxi a birthday. Walking outside Yanxi's study, he saw Jin Rongzeng holding a feathered duster and holding the door behind his back, coming out of the door. He had already smiled and said, "It's so early for the 3 girls to come to pay their birthdays at this time. Master Qi hasn't gotten up yet, so he slept soundly." Zhao Lan followed Mrs. Jin and always followed the rules. After hearing this, she felt a little bit, "Excuse me." Blushing, he said, "We have something to do. Let's see if Mr. Qi is up." Who said birthday wishes? After saying that, he turned around and left. The Jin family can be regarded as a somewhat Western civilized family, and the kowtow ceremony has long been dispensed with. So Yanxi didn't have to go and salute her parents that day, and no one from her peers would say congratulations. But everyone prepared gifts one after another and sent them to Yanxi. Although his 3 sisters and 3 sisters-in-law all sent checks, they had to embellish it for the sake of dignity, so they bought some other gifts to send. Among them, there are those who send stationery supplies, some who send cosmetics, some who send silk materials, and some who send food. Jin Quan himself also gave Yanxi a Swiss watch, which meant telling him to cherish time. Mrs. Jin gave a suit, and the second concubine and Aunt Kui also received a check for 100 yuan each. The second concubine also gave a fountain pen, and Aunt Kui gave 14 boxes of antique letterheads, all included. It means a little lesson to people. Among them, there are only things belonging to Miley, which are the most appropriate gifts. It was a large photo of 24 foreign movie stars. All the gifts were either in boxes or wrapped in paper, with the words Zhaoguan commemorative written on the outside, according to the relationship between Yan and Shi. Some of the gifts were written as gifts, some were written as gifts, and some were written as dedications. Jin Rong put the 2 desks together and placed all the gifts on them. Yan Shi didn't get up. The 2 desks were already filled with things, arranged one by one according to seniority. In addition, there are more than 30 osmanthus bonsais given by Qingqiu and others, all of which are placed on the railings of the corridor outside the house. In addition, at the request of Jin Rong and Li Sheng, several personal servants, they hung tens of thousands of national flags and brocade ribbons around the corridor. Although it was not very gorgeous, these rooms were still decorated with flowers. After sleeping until 10 o'clock, Yanxi turned over and woke up. Suddenly, a strange fragrance hit her nose. I pressed my head against the quilt and sniffed the air. It was the scent of osmanthus. This means you know that their gift has been sent. As soon as I got up, I didn't have time to put on my clothes, so I grabbed a Russian blanket, put it on my shoulders, put on my shoes, and went to the outside room to look at the gifts. At this time, Yufan also came inside to see the gifts. When he saw it, he smiled and said, "Today is not your birthday, I have to describe it with a nice word." Yanxi said, "No need to describe it, I know it myself. Do I look like a rickshaw driver?" Yufan said, "Stop being naughty." Just get up and put on your clothes. Otherwise, you will get cold. I will call a waiter for you. Get dressed quickly so that we can eat noodles together." When he said that, Yanxi rang the bell, and Jin Rong came in to deliver face wash. Jin Rong was also amused when he saw it. Yanxi asked Yufen to sit in the room outside, while she quickly washed her face and put on clothes. After getting dressed, he leaned against Yanxi and had a sip of tea before leaving. Yufen said, "Let's go. Let's go to the dining room to eat noodles. There are many people waiting for the longevity guy there. If you want tea, go there to drink." Yanxi said, "It's too early to eat noodles. I just got up." Yufen said, "How can I rely on you? You just got up. If you get up at 3 o'clock, is it early?" Yanxi couldn't help but follow her. It turns out that the rules of the Jin family are that everyone usually eats in their own courtyards, but during family banquets on festive occasions and New Year's Eve, they eat in the big dining room. Today is Yanxi's birthday, so everyone gathered in the dining room again. Even Feng Jiu, who hadn't seen him for many days, was also in the dining room. As soon as everyone saw Yanxi, they laughed and said, "Ah, the birthday boy is here." Yanxi forgot everything for a while, raised his hands, and bowed to everyone. He kept saying, "Congratulations, congratulations." Huiqing said, "What's going on? You congratulate us? What's the good news for us?" After saying this, everyone was happy. Aunt Kui was sitting next to Huiqing. She smiled softly and said, "This is the lottery. Why didn't you know?" As she said that, she glanced at Paifang, who was sitting next to her. He smiled and said, "This is where you two can bear this sentence." Huiqing said with a smile, "How can you talk about this in public? And it's irrelevant." Here Paifang saw them pointing and laughing. Yin asked, "What are you talking about me? This is also a small longevity hall, so don't make random jokes." In her heart, she thought it was pointing at Feng Jiu and herself for not talking. Yufen was also afraid that if she said she was deadlocked, it would be inconvenient for everyone. Then he said with a smile, "Our birthday gifts have been given, and it's time for Duke Xiaogang to entertain us in the afternoon. We have to ask Duke Xiaogang to announce what we are going to do first." Yanxi said, "It's still the same magic group, but some friends sent a circus group or a few kun operas, but I didn't dare to agree." As she said this, she looked at Mrs. Jin. Mrs. Jin said, "It's just a circus. It's full of nonsense. I'm afraid your father won't like it. It's okay to sing to operas for everyone to have fun." Yanxi said, "If that's the case, if Dad is angry, Mom will bear the responsibility." It turned out that Jin Quan was the only one who didn't sit in the dining room. Although Mrs. Jin agreed, it was still unknown whether Jin Quan agreed. So Yanxi said this. Mrs. Jin laughed and said, "What's the matter? Can't I make the decision?" Everyone heard that the mother made the decision, so the matter would be easy to handle, so everyone immediately laughed. Yufen said, "Is there any good female singer? I want to listen to a play of Yu Tang Chun." Miley said, "What's the point? She kneels there and sings, and it's so boring. I watched a play last time, where a maid pretended to be a lady and became the wife of the top scholar. The official called for food when he saw people, but he refused to persuade them to reconcile. He came as soon as he was told to eat shredded chicken noodles. And there was the old man of the top scholar, with a painted face and a stick as a walking stick, and she was originally with the second concubine, and the second concubine said, 'It's a mess. They've been making a fuss for a long time, and I don't know what to say. She has something else. You don't say anything more. The more you talk, the more confused people will be.'" Mrs. Jin laughed and said, "Don't say she's talking nonsense. There is such a play. I also heard it somewhere once, and I laughed so hard that my stomach hurt. The name of the play is He Baoju." The second concubine said, "That doesn't sound like a line from a play, but it sounds like a person's name. Ask our drama master, and he will know for sure." Yufin said, "What's there to not know? It's called He Zhu Pei." Paifeng was just picking up a fork of meat floss with chopsticks to eat, so she pointed at Yufin with her chopsticks and said, "Look at her. She's so conceited that she's a drama master." At this time, Qingqiu happened to bring a dish of rose broad bean sauce to the table. Seeing Paifeng holding a fork of meat floss over, she hurriedly took a sauce dish from the table and went forward to take it. She laughed and said, "Thank you, eldest young lady, but we have it on our table too." At that time, no one thought it. but later they thought that Qingqiu had misunderstood, and everyone burst into laughter. This made Qingqiu embarrassed, and she stood stupidly in the crowd. Yufan laughed again, and said, "What are you standing here for? Go over." Qingqiu blushed and had to walk away with her head down. Fengzhu also laughed and said, "No need to listen to the comedy. This is a very good comedy." Pai Feng heard this, glanced at Fengzhu and said nothing. Yanxi was very understanding, so he interrupted and said, "Since everyone wants to listen to a comedy, I will invite a few more clowns." Yufan said, "What's the point? It's better to invite to singers, and let us listen to his performances quietly." Mrs. Jin frowned and said, "You are just so incapable of handling big things. You make a fuss over a small problem like sesame seeds before you even deal with it." Yanxi laughed and said, "This should be discussed first, and then we can decide what play to play and what costumes people should wear." Mrs. Jin said, "We are eating noodles now. It won't be too late to discuss it after we finish eating." Yanxi said, "It's true. Eat the noodles quickly, and then come to my place for an emergency meeting. I will entertain anyone who wants to attend." Pai Feng laughed and said, "Forget it. It's not a good role. Why do we have to consider it so seriously? Let's just let our drama doctor be the drama director and let her arrange it. She knows who wants to listen to what drama, and she can arrange it well." Yufan said, "How easy is it to be a drama director? Even if you want to arrange the drama, you should first know what role there is. What drama is he good at? And who can play with him? How can we just choose the drama we like? If we choose the drama and they can't sing it well, it's useless." So he turned around and went out and came to Yufan. Yufan's room was crowded with people, and the playlist had just been arranged. Yufan looked back and saw Shuju coming into the room, so she said, "I thought you should come too." Shuju smiled and said, "You thought I should come, and I thought you should show up too." As she said this, she lifted the curtain and walked in. Pai Feng smiled and said, "Who is the ear-reporting god? Who told her this news?" Yufan said, "Then who else could it be? It must be the birthday man." Pai Feng smiled and said, "The birthday man is so nosy. He should have invited the birthday lady here early, reiterated the family rules to her, and disciplined her strictly. I think his fast-talking problem might be cured." As she said this, she deliberately glared at Yufan in front of Shuju. Shuju pretended not to see or hear anything, but said to Huiqing, who was sitting aside, "Why are you all here? Are you discussing something important?" Huiqing said, "We have just arranged the playlist. The actors should be here soon. But you can't listen to the play in vain. You have to celebrate the birthday." Did you celebrate the birthday? This question embarrassed Shuju. If she said no, it didn't make sense. If she said she would celebrate the birthday, she would feel embarrassed. She just smiled and said, "A civilized family like yours still needs the ancient custom of celebrating the birthday?" Pai Feng replied, "Should we? That's the host's business. Pay respect or not. It is up to you as the guest." Shuju said, "Although that is what I said, if the host does not like birthday greetings, and insists on doing so, that is not knowing the times. Why should I not know the times?" Pai Feng gave a thumbs up and said with a smile, "Sister Shuju, you are really good at talking. I admire you." Shuju was about to say something when the old maid came in and said, "The two young ladies from the Wu family are here. Where will they sit?" Pai Feng said, "How come they know about it too?" Yufan said with a smile, "She is also a good friend of Lockie. Shouldn't she come? Speaking of which, Lockie has a girlfriend. I wonder if she will come." Pai Feng tilted her head and thought, "Who is it?" Shuju was very unhappy to hear that, thinking that they must be talking about the one with the surname Leng. Yufan replied, "Isn't there also a Miss Kia? This person likes to study movies very much. Once she talks to her about this matter, she will never stop. Lockie also loves movies, so they get along very well." Pai Feng said, "You are talking about her. She will definitely come. Because she is a good friend of Miss Wu. Miss Wu knows, she will definitely know." Hui Chang smiled and said, "I think one friend of the opposite sex is enough. If there are more, it will be very troublesome. I don't advocate that Lao Qi has many girlfriends. Just one is enough." Pei Feng deliberately asked, "If you only want one, which one should you want?" Shuju didn't know what to do after being teased by them. It would be inappropriate to answer, and it would be inappropriate not to answer. Yufan saw this situation, and said with a smile, "Don't make fun of others. People come to celebrate your family's birthday, and you try your best to make fun of them. Is this reasonable? After that, everyone laughed. Shuju smiled and said, when guests from outside come, don't you push someone to entertain them? Yufan said, sure enough, just joking and throwing away the real talk. Then she said to the old nanny, this is to meet the seventh master. Let the seventh master entertain them. When my mother heard that, when she went to the small living room outside to meet the two, Miss Wu, Yanxi sent someone to invite them, so she didn't say anything. The two Miss Wu went to Yanxi's room and saw Yanxi instructing several servants to move the sweet scented osmanthus bonsai there. Miss Wu had already raised her snow-white arms across the corridor, waved them in the air, and said with a smile, I'm here to pay my respects. Please go to the birthday hall, so that we can pay our respects. Yanxi nodded from a distance and said, the birthday hall? I'll prepare it when I turn 70. Oh, the eldest lady is here too. I really don't deserve it. Miss Wu smiled and said, so, if I don't have to take a step, how can I dare to pay my respects? Yanxi smiled and said, I never talk much. Do you mind? Miss Wu said, I'm just joking. Don't be suspicious. How many guests are there today? It's probably enough to keep the seventh master busy for a day. Yanxi said, even if very familiar people are talking together, it can be said that there are no guests. Miss Wu asked, is Miss Leng coming too? She asked honestly, and Yanxi couldn't deny it, so he replied calmly, she doesn't know, and probably won't come. Miss Wu asked, which Miss Leng? Is that the one you told me about last time? Why don't you invite her so I can meet her? Yanxi said, you can invite her for other things, but why invite someone to celebrate your birthday? He asked this question to evade the question asked by the two young ladies of the Wu family. The two of them sat in Yanxi's room for a while, and the male guests outside came one after another. Yanxi invited the two young ladies Wu to sit inside, and he went outside to accompany the guests. Most of the male guests who came were young men, so it was naturally lively. A birthday man came in and out, and Yanxi was finally very happy today. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.